Hi there, good morning everybody. My name is Chris Hoge. I am the INTEROP engineer for the OpenStack Foundation. I've been with the foundation for a couple of years now. And I'd like to, say welcome to everybody to the OpenStack Day Seattle. These OpenStack Days are really exciting events. This year we're going to have about 30 of them spread all over the world, some of them reaching out to as many as several thousand people. And we at the OpenStack Foundation feel that they are a very important way for us to bring the spirit and the excitement of our summits to a more local audience who may not otherwise be able to attend them. So I would like to extend an enormous thank you to the organizers for putting the event together. Thank you, especially Sharam and all of the other organizers, but to also all of you for attending and joining our community and being part of it. So today I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about where OpenStack is and where we're planning on going in the future. I'm going to start with talking about OpenStack Mitaka. Mitaka was the most recent release, our most recent release of OpenStack. It was released at our OpenStack Summit in Austin, and it was planned at our OpenStack Summit in Tokyo. And a little bit about where the names come from, if you aren't familiar with it. The names of the releases come from some geographic feature or some interesting thing around the place where the release was planned. And so in this case, Mitaka is a feature near Tokyo. And Sean mentioned some of these numbers earlier, but OpenStack is really kind of an enormous community collaboration. We've had over 2,000 developers contribute to this release of Mitaka from over 300 worldwide organizations. And every release kind of has almost a theme to it, things that we're looking at achieving. In this case, the Mitaka release was really focused on some feedback we received from our users in the field who wanted a better experience in terms of manageability, scalability, and just overall user experience. Now, one of the things we like to say at the OpenStack Foundation is we love data, and especially when we can use it to learn about the user experience. And one of the important tools we use to gather this data is our semi-annual user survey. And let's talk about what some of our users are saying about this experience. One number that jumped out at us during the last user survey was that of all of the users, 65% reported that they were using OpenStack in production. Now, this is a great indicator of how mature OpenStack has become over the years. But I'm also a mathematician, and sometimes just a simple number isn't enough, like saying 65% of deployments in production. Sometimes I like to know how fast that's changing. Another statistic we pulled from this is that this has increased by more than 33% in the last year. It's just a phenomenal growth of OpenStack, and it's something that I think we're going to see more and more as the years go on. So what's helped to drive this increase in adoption? Well, from the same user survey, overwhelmingly our users say that standardizing on the same platform and APIs that power a global network of public and private clouds is one of the top 5 reasons for adopting OpenStack. The idea of standard, stable, and reliable APIs is important for all aspects of our community, from the developers who work hard to maintain backwards compatibility with every release, to the users who rely on the APIs for their applications, and to the vendors who are participating in a thriving ecosystem. In fact, stable APIs are so important. In 2015, we relaunched the OpenStack-powered trademark program with a refocused emphasis on vendors providing interoperable APIs in their OpenStack products. And this was the main project that I was hired by the foundation to work on, and so it's something that's very close to my heart. When you're looking for public clouds or private clouds, you can find the OpenStack-powered mark and know that it means it's been tested by the foundation and shown to meet a minimum standard of interoperability. And the program has been really successful too. We launched it in Vancouver last year, and today we have more than 40 OpenStack-powered products in the OpenStack Marketplace. So how does this work? We've broken the program down into the idea of components: OpenStack-powered compute and OpenStack-powered object storage. Together, these components represent what we would call a full OpenStack-powered platform. Now, each of these components are defined by two other key parts. The first is that we require all OpenStack-powered products to have common code. This is code that is developed by the community, for the community, and is guaranteed to be in every OpenStack-powered product. OpenStack-powered also means that there are going to be a common set of APIs across every one of those products. And these are backed by community-developed, must-pass interoperability tests. And what does this mean for OpenStack interoperability? Well, it gives us mature, stable interfaces that are thoroughly tested, stable and consistent, and open and free for all. Everybody in this room today could go and start building an OpenStack-powered cloud with software that is entirely free. And to consider how thoroughly tested this is, just the other day I was talking with one of the infrastructure engineers, and they were talking about how during the Newton release, the tests that we run against OpenStack are run 2,000 times every hour. Over the Newton cycle, we'll have run over 2 million integration tests, making sure that the software is stable and consistent. And these tests themselves are stable. There is a strong commitment from the OpenStack community to not change the APIs in a way that will break backwards compatibility. Another metric that we can use to measure OpenStack's success is its adoption in the market. OpenStack is being used in half of the Fortune 100 companies. These include some of the biggest companies in their field. The largest retailer, Sean Roberts was just here from Walmart, telecom company, power company, car company, and mobile phone carrier in the world all use OpenStack. China Mobile alone has 850 million subscribers. This is 850 million subscribers who are in some way touching OpenStack on a day-to-day basis without knowing it. And OpenStack is used in a huge variety of business sectors, from financial services to manufacturing, media, scientific research, telecom, and it just keeps growing. And you can add to this that OpenStack public clouds are available in many cities and countries throughout the world, including throughout the Asia-Pacific region. So we spent some time talking about where OpenStack is right now. But now I'd like to talk a little bit about where it's going. Right now, we're in the middle of a transformation to a software-defined economy. You can see this in almost every application that is making a big push onto your phone right now. For home sharing or ride sharing. There's this massive transformation to a software-defined economy, and it's huge and disruptive. And OpenStack is a part of that disruption. Now, disruption can be terrifying. It's really scary when all of the models that you depended upon and that were stable and reliable are starting to shift out from underneath you. But it can also be the biggest opportunity of a lifetime if we're prepared. And we can prepare ourselves in part by following kind of these three principles. And these are, a lot of these things are taken from what our chief, talks that our chief operating officer, Jonathan Bryce, has given at similar events. The first is that you would want to think carefully about what platforms you pick and standardize on them. The infrastructure layer, compute, storage, and networking, is a logical layer to standardize on, with reliable APIs on top, because every single app is going to need these basic building blocks. All applications have to process, store, and move data. And you can think about layers of abstraction on top of this. And so you have your cloud-native applications. Cloud-native apps are very new apps that just take the infrastructure for granted. It's there. There's always something in the cloud to grab a hold of, and you can scale and stand up resources and tear them down as necessary. But all of that infrastructure still has to be there underneath it. You also have application primitives that are models for dealing with common application requirements. Things like Kubernetes are built just for this. And so you take all of your apps and you put them inside of these containers, and this is the mechanism that they use to scale these apps out. But underneath all of that, you have your infrastructure primitives. And this is where OpenStack really shines at managing those building blocks for you. The second principle, new apps are always going to need the old apps. Even when you build new cloud-native apps, they need to access all of the old data. And this is why you want to standardize on a single infrastructure platform and not create more islands within your data center. A way to think about it is that you have all of these different categories. You have cloud-hosted systems, which could represent things that have your databases and your infrastructure that you're moving from your bare metal systems into virtualization, but also cloud-optimized systems and cloud-native systems. OpenStack can be the standard layer underneath all of these. But you're also going to need other technologies too. And this is why we like to call OpenStack an integration engine. Finally, technology doesn't mean anything if you don't have the culture backing it. In fact, culture in a lot of ways is even more important than technologies. So one story that was related to Jonathan by a company was that it took them 44 days to go from completing an application to deploying that application to their customers. And they implemented cloud because they wanted this to move faster. And so they spent a considerable amount of time, a considerable amount of effort deploying cloud infrastructure. And they went from 44 days to 42 days. So it's not really the success that they were looking for. And why is that? It turns out that the cloud technology wasn't enough. What was also needed inside of the company was a shift to fix the culture and process, to be more agile, to take advantage of resources on demand rather than filing tickets for new servers, for integrating with continuous integration systems, for taking advantage of all of the agility and freedom that a cloud-based infrastructure gives to you. So remember, the cloud technology is essential, but it's not enough without the culture change. And once they changed the culture, they were able to get their process down from 42 days to 2 hours from application completion and testing to launched. This is the third and final key to managing disruption. And if you wind up following these keys, you can satisfy your competing priorities. You can embrace diversity in the data center. Okay, so now let's move on and let's talk about what's happening in the infrastructure market and what this means for OpenStack. Demand for infrastructure is exploding right now. Cisco has estimated that by 2020, there are going to be 50 billion connected devices on the internet. Every one of these devices is going to need infrastructure to process, move, and store the data that's coming off of it. To handle that, it's estimated that we're going to need 400 million servers just to handle that load. And it's clear that this many servers cannot be managed like they were in the past. What's needed is a software system that can turn all of this hardware into programmable resource units. Any combination you need of bare metal, virtual machines, and containers. And OpenStack, we feel that OpenStack is this integration engine. It's built for the next decade and beyond. But it's also clear that OpenStack isn't going to be going at this all alone. We often get a lot of questions about other technologies that are here and disrupting the market, things like Docker, things like Kubernetes. But when you look at the history of the web, you can see that the LAMP stack emerged as one of the key drivers of all of the technology that we were using. There was PHP on top of MySQL, on top of Apache, on top of Linux. And all of these were projects that were being developed in the open, independently from one another. Yet when you put them all together, you came up with something that was much more powerful and really transformed the information ecosystem. So that leads to the question of what will be the LAMP stack of the cloud? What is going to be the combination of technologies that is going to transform the world? I'm not sure that we can say we know what that is yet, but the few things are clear. Users are saying they want containers. They want to have more, they want to be able to deploy applications faster and more isolated. They want to have NFV and software-defined networks. And also, they want to move away from virtualization and be able to take advantage of the performance increase from bare metal. So let's just look at containers themselves. Within containers, These are all of the container orchestration engines and PaaS projects that our users are most frequently using today. Now, the eagle eye may notice that if you take all of the bars on that graph and you add them up, they come up to be more than 100. It's more than 100% because organizations are using many of these different technologies within their organization. There's no clear winner. And so what we need to do is support diversity in the data center. Because it's collaborate or die in a world where there are 50 billion connected devices and 400 million servers behind them. So this is how we tackle the huge challenges ahead of us. Through collaboration within industries, across open source projects, and across countries. No one can tackle this alone. No one country, no one company, and no one industry. So this is kind of a big message, that we're going to have this explosion of data and processing and how to handle this. And you might be asking yourself, well, where do I fit into this? Well, it's something that our community has been thinking about a lot. And within the OpenStack community, we've produced a few white papers that represent recommendations from our enterprise community. This includes OpenStack, A Business Perspective, which you can download, and also OpenStack, The Path to Cloud. And these can be found at openstack.org/enterprise. But for individuals, we've launched an exciting new program that I was also heavily involved with called the Certified OpenStack Administrator Exam. I spent a good amount of time helping to write the content for this, doing a lot of the beta testing of it and rolling it out. This was also released at our OpenStack Summit in Austin. And the exam is a hands-on demonstration of the fundamental OpenStack skills that you would need to use almost every single day if you're running an OpenStack cluster. And if anybody is interested in taking this exam, I strongly encourage you to look at it. You can take it remotely. You have a year from the time you purchase it to take it. You get a free retake if it doesn't go so well the first time. And it really captures the essential skills needed to operate an OpenStack cloud. In a few weeks, we're going to have the OpenStack Summit Barcelona. One of the things we'll be talking about there are all of the exciting new features that are going to be coming out in the latest release, OpenStack Newton, which is coming out next week. So we're pretty excited about that. We're hoping that you'll be able to make it. But if you can't, we will also be recording most of the sessions at the summit, and they'll be available for you to watch remotely. And oftentimes we're able to live stream the sessions too, so you can participate even if you can't make it all the way out to Barcelona. In the spring, we're going to be heading out to Boston for the week of May 8th. And we hope that you'll be able to make that summit also. So thank you to everyone for coming to this event. I hope you all have a fantastic day. I would be happy to talk with anyone about anything that I've said or any other questions they have about OpenStack while I'll be here all day. And I just want everyone to have a good time with OpenStack. Thank you. Yeah, I mean these projects. Yeah, so the question from the audience was, how are the container projects within the community solidifying? There are two ways that you can look at how containers. Well, there are a few ways that you can look at how containers are being integrated within the OpenStack community. And so right now there are a few projects that are using containers to deploy OpenStack. You can look at things like Cola and OpenStack Ansible, which are both using container-based technologies for OpenStack deployments. My personal experience with both of the projects is that they are very stable and they work incredibly well. We also have container-based projects that are working to make OpenStack networking more reliable within containers. And so there's the underlying layer, which I think is moving along very well. And then on top of that, we have Magnum, which is deploying OpenStack containers, which is deploying containers and managing container systems on an existing OpenStack deployment. This project has been moving along, and it's a fairly new project. And so one of the things we do in OpenStack is, with all of the projects is we measure the maturity of the project through the I forget the name of the we have we have a site at the OpenStack on the OpenStack page that measures the maturity of the projects. And one of the things that we're seeing is that Magnum is improving in maturity, but we haven't seen a whole lot of, say, public deployments out there. But I think that, I mean, my guess is that the team is working really hard. They're moving along really quickly, and we should be seeing a lot more live container products out there in the market, I think, within the next year. Yes, the OpenStack Project Navigator. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Morning. Morning. Thanks for the talk. So Ceph has been there's been like a Ceph day co-located with OpenStack for the last couple summits. What other technologies groups are co-located with OpenStack in Barcelona this year?
So one of them that jumps out in my mind right away is NFV. This has been a collaboration that we've had with the Linux Foundation that started in Vancouver, and has really grown quite a bit in the last few years. A lot of telcos especially are interested in NFV technologies. Immediately, that's one that comes to mind. There's also a tremendous amount of collaboration between, as we talked about in the talk, containers have also been really popular, and how we integrate container infrastructure both on top of virtual machines, but also on top of bare metal, has also been an important topic. Okay, so the question is about the OpenStack Powered program. So the OpenStack Powered program, I mentioned before, it kind of breaks down into different components, and so we have OpenStack Powered Compute, and we have OpenStack Powered Storage. Those are both individual trademarks, and then we have OpenStack Powered Platform, which is a combination of those two. Now, within the marketplace, we do differentiate between public clouds, private clouds, and distributions. But the same trademark applies to all three of these. The idea being that if you go to a public cloud, you should be assured that the APIs that are available on that public cloud are also going to be available in a private cloud that might be deployed for you by a vendor, or it could also be available to you if you installed OpenStack from a distribution. So even though we differentiate between public, private, and distributions, the same testing standard and the same code standard applies to all three. Yeah. So we would say so if you're running just compute, and compute is a little bit of a misnomer because it captures compute, networking, block storage, images, authentication. Then you would say that you would be running OpenStack Powered Compute. If you were just running an object store cluster with Swift and Keystone on top of that, we would say that you were running OpenStack Powered Storage. If you're running all of the compute infrastructure and object storage, we would call that OpenStack Powered Platform. Yeah, it will. The trademark will say OpenStack Powered Compute or OpenStack Powered Platform. Okay, if there aren't any more questions, thank you.